today's video is going to be on our Canadian dollar bills. So on our Canadian dollar bills, there are pictures that sort of reflect our heritage as a nation. Whether they are political figures, societal figures, monuments, or objects, they all are part of our history. That's what this video is going to be about, the significance of the people and the objects that are on our Canadian dollar bills. Let's go. So we're going to start off with the $5 bill. Now on the first side, we see Wilfrid Laurier. Wilfrid Laurier, he was the Prime Minister of Canada, one of the longest serving from 1896 to 1911. He was not only one of the longest serving Prime Ministers in Canada's history, but also the first bilingual one, Francophone and Anglophone. He was able to seek compromise between the English and the French at a time where there was a lot of cultural and political animosity between the both of them. Now, one of the ways that this manifested itself was when Laurier signed the Laurier-Greenway Agreement in Manitoba. The Laurier-Greenway Agreement allowed the Catholics at the time in Manitoba, which were mainly Francophones, to have a half hour every day of Catholic education. At the time, that angered a lot of Anglophones who wanted no part in Catholic education, while on the other hand, it also angered a lot of French people who were living in Manitoba because for them, they wanted a full Catholic education. Laurier was sort of this figure of compromise at a time when there was a lot of tension between the English and the French in Canada. Laurier continued the westward expansion of Canada and actually encouraged immigrants that were arriving in Canada to settle these new lands, and he oversaw the addition of Alberta and Saskatchewan into the Confederation. Now on the other side, we see what is called Canadarm, one of the most innovative things that Canada has produced when it comes to space exploration, space travel. So Canadarm was actually designed in response to a need by NASA, and they were starting a program which was the space shuttle. Canada's job in their case was to produce this robotic arm in a way that would help this space shuttle program that the US were developing. And because of Canada's contribution, this actually allowed us to send our first astronaut to space, Marc Garneau, in 1981. The Canadarm was used from 1981 all the way to 2011. So for 30 years, it was in operation and it served its purpose. Now for the $10 bill. On the one side, we can see Viola Desmond. Viola Desmond, she was a Nova Scotian lady who faced racial discrimination when she was trying to go at the movie theater and sat in a row or in a section that was reserved for only white people, and she got removed, sent to jail without being told what her rights were. And it really became one of the most publicized cases of racism in Canada and helped the civil rights movement of Canada. And on the other end, sort of on the same theme of civil rights, equality, and all that stuff, is the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. I don't think I really need to go in depth into the meaning of, the Museum of Human Rights. It goes hand in hand with Viola Desmond's case. It's really meant to reiterate Canada's core values, which are, I would say, equality, justice, fairness, and respect. Now we arrive at the $20 bill, which today has Queen Elizabeth at the front. Queen Elizabeth is meant to reflect our political system, which is a constitutional monarchy, reflecting our history that is totally intertwined with the UK, with Britain, Great Britain, and the British Empire. To remember that Canada was a colony at some point of the British Empire. But again, it's meant to reflect the fact that our system of governance was largely copied from Britain. Now on the other side, we can see the Vimy Ridge Memorial. Now the Vimy Ridge Memorial is actually a monument that's in France today, dedicated to Canadian soldiers that served during World War I. And again, this goes back to our history as a colony originally of the British Empire. And in 1914, our foreign policy was largely controlled by the British. So that meant that we had to send some Canadians to fight abroad during World War I. So Vimy Ridge at the time had been captured by the Germans, and the French wanted to recapture that, and the Canadians were helping in that effort. And it was actually one of the first time where regiments from all lands of the country took part in this action together, and it sort of helped build this sort of national pride identity, in a way, having all of these people come together. And it definitely laid the groundwork for a Canadian identity. And today it's a memorial for all of the Canadian soldiers that died during that battle, but also in World War I. So if you go there, you're going to see a lot of different names that are meant to pay homage to the legacy and to the sacrifices that these soldiers made for our country. Now we're on to the $50 bill. On the one side, we have William Lyon Mackenzie King. William Lyon Mackenzie King, he's the longest serving prime minister ever in our history. He was prime minister first from 1921 to 1930, and that time was really defined by the fact that he negotiated a lot more independence from Great Britain. He played a part in the implementation of the Statute of Westminster, which gave dominions like ours, Canada, a lot more independence when it came to our foreign policy. He was also the prime minister that guided Canada throughout the Second World War and acted as sort of a middleman, a broker between Winston Churchill and Franklin D. Roosevelt. William Lyon Mackenzie King was an important figure because of just the fact that he was guiding the country through a really tumultuous time in world affairs. I would argue he also established the basis of military cooperation between Canada and the USA. And that really started during the Second World War. He briefly served after the Second World War, and his main sort of policy achievement during that time was the fact that he integrated Newfoundland and Labrador into Canada. Now on the other side, that's an icebreaker called the CCGS Amundsen. But that icebreaker today is used for Arctic exploration and research. Canada's Arctic is melting because of climate change, but that is also opening up a whole bunch of economic opportunities in terms of natural resources and also in terms of maritime shipping. Now, on the one hand, the ice sheet in the Arctic is melting, so that means that in the future, we're going to be able to do a lot more agriculture, and it's also going to allow us to do a lot more natural resource explorations, a lot of mines, a lot of oil potentially. And when it comes to maritime shipping, this is opening up what they are calling the Northwest Passage. The Northwest Passage is really going to revolutionize, once it's fully open, maritime international shipping, because it's going to allow us and the United States and other actors to pass by that area, significantly decrease the amount of time that it takes to go from either Europe or Asia. And that means that a lot more countries are going to be passing through Canadian waterways, and that's going to bring in a whole lot of other geopolitical issues for us that we're going to have to confront eventually. But right now, this ship is being used to explore and do further research when it comes to Canada's Arctic. Now we're finally on to the last one, the $100 bill. Now on the $100 bill, we have Robert Borden. He served as the prime minister during the First World War. Now, if you remember earlier what I said about the First World War, we didn't have control of our foreign policy, so we didn't have a choice to send Canadians over. But in the background, Robert Borden was actively campaigning for more independence of our country. And in the end, he did get us more independence. The League of Nations at the time, which was basically the UN that was created after the First World War, recognized Canada as a country. It's these people that worked to get more independence from the British, and Robert Borden was one of these people that actively campaigned for more independence of our country. Now on the other end, we have insulin. Now, insulin was actually a medical innovation that was done in Canada. So it was in 1923 that Frederick Banting, a Canadian medical scientist, won the Nobel Prize for physiology. He actually was able to isolate it from the pancreas of a dog. As many of you know today, insulin is actually used to treat diabetes. So we can thank a Canadian scientist who was able to isolate it, and now it's commercially available to treat diabetes. So that's the whole video, guys. I hope I did a decent job at sort of summarizing the important aspects of each figure, each picture that are on our Canadian dollar bills, and help people understand a bit of our history and our heritage. If I missed anything important or I didn't say something that was factual, let me know, leave your comments. I have more videos coming up on Canadian history and our place in the world in general, so stay tuned for that. I also have music that's available on music streaming platforms, so Spotify, Apple Music, and whatever else. You can find me on there, Noah William. Subscribe if you want more Canadian content, and I'll see you at the next one. Thank you so much. Bye.